again, is to say that if you're an extremist on either end of the spectrum, this campaign is a problem for you, because actually defining jihad for what it is and taking ownership of it, not being afraid to speak about it, undermines extremist Islamophobes and undermines extremist Muslims. Does everybody know and understand exactly what jihad is? And you should. How about you? You, sir, with the green, what is jihad?
Jihad is struggle or strive.
Okay, very good. Can anybody give me, and this is more personal, can someone tell me what is their jihad? What's something that you really strive for, and that you actually strive and you have to ask Allah to help you in striving for that? And even before you answer, let me preface this to say that, you may have guessed by looking at me that I'm a convert Muslim, right? And jihad itself is something that was very appealing to me. As a person who was looking for faith, for looking for answers, for looking for success, right? I mean, some people don't realize in the call to prayer, where part of it is say, come to success, right? That I recognize that, getting somewhere in life, making a difference, changing yourself, this is a jihad. It's not an easy thing to change your life or to become a better person. And if you are going to do that, I think that's one of the amazing things. I mean, you experience this more in Ramadan, but one of the amazing things about Islam in general is we have a whole community that is dedicated to sort of self-improvement and striving for good things and spiritualizing that striving. So is anybody, Mr. Green sweatshirt, what's your jihad? He's looking around. Someone next to me has a blue sweatshirt. It was a trick question. What is your jihad? Paying attention?
I mentioned this one yesterday. It's to focus more on praying rather than drifting off.
Okay. What's it called? Khushu'? Is that the right way? Like to focus during prayer?
Conserve.
Yeah.
Okay. Hollister, what do you got, man?
Hollister.
My dear brother Hollister.
This is Bar. What is my jihad, like in myself or like just like overall?
Whatever you got, man.
Well, one is to disprove a lot of inaccurate accusations about Muslims and to free refugees around the world.
All right, mashallah, that's a good one. How about on the sister side? You heard those jihads? Do you have anything better than that?
No.
No, you said no. That's it. Come on, sisters. Come on, Islam's wife.
My jihad? My jihad is to find misconceptions about Islam in today's society.
Wow, all of you guys are just really on the front lines of changing people's minds about Islam. I like that. Someone was raising their hand in the back there.
Oh, me? I would say stop listening to music.
What is it?
Stop listening to music.
Stop listening to music. All right, very good, very good. Alhamdulillah. So, one thing about civil rights struggles and movements is that, and really you see this all the time. Does anyone here recognize this person?
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, very good.
Sorry.
How about this guy? All right, there we go. We got Malcolm and Martin. We got them both. And then we have all these people, right? Whenever there's a movement, people tend to focus on these leaders, these people on the front lines, and we tend to forget that if Malcolm called people to march on Washington, if Martin called people to march on Washington, nobody did, right? Nothing would have changed. Nothing would have happened. So the real heroes of the civil rights movement in this country were the people who took off from work, who took their whatever money they had and traveled across the country to participate in this, regardless of what the consequences would be for them. And here's another person from the civil rights movement who's maybe not as well known, Ella Jo Baker, who said that the major job was getting people to understand that they had something within their power that they could use, and it could only be used if they understood what was happening and how group action could counter violence. And I think that this lady was saying this like I don't know, 50 years ago. But that, I think, is really what social media is all about. It's about group action and people realizing that it's really a power that they themselves have, and if they participate, they can change, the course of history. Now typically that would be the end of my presentation, but there's a couple things I wanted to mention, right? So on MyJihad, if you go to Google and you type it in and you look at the pictures that come back, you'll get some that are very positive, very creative, very interesting, that were made by the Muslim community. But you'll actually find a few that express a hateful message. And if you look a little bit deeper into those, something that's really interesting about those is that they're not made by Muslims. That the hate groups against Muslims have sort of tried to hijack the MyJihad thing to make their own fake Muslim MyJihad things, because Muslims were being peaceful and creative, and it's sort of like they couldn't imagine that that's how it would be, so they had to make their own, hate examples within this media campaign. And I think that's how powerful this thing is. That these people, when they found that Muslims were doing something so positive, they had to jump in and do something negative. And I think that that's something that we're going to see a little bit in the media coverage of this as it goes forward. That when we're so peaceful, these other people had to bring in hatred into this campaign. And it's actually something like that happens with extremists. And I know that in I'm trying to remember what it is, that the Newburgh community and Wappingers itself in the past was targeted by somebody who actually came to this community looking for extremism. And when they didn't find it here, they went somewhere else. And they still didn't really find it, but they found vulnerable people. And when they found these vulnerable people, they were able to sort of hatch kind of like a made-up plot and try to prove that, oh look, Muslims in America really are up to no good. So here in the social media, we have a reflection of that. That even when Muslims are doing something overwhelmingly positive, there's going to be an opposition group that tries to do something fake and then, sort of tar us or mark us with that. And I really think that, there's some things that we could do about that, but I think that in the MyJihad sense, everybody here, if you believe in this and you think that it's good, what you need to do is sort of drown out the negativity with so many positive examples of this that when someone goes to search for it, all they find is another positive one, another creative one, another funny one, and the voice of hate is actually just drowned out by all these positive ones. The last thing I want to leave you with is a book that I want to recommend that everybody in here reads, which is called The New Jim Crow. Has anyone here read this book? Avid readers. Hollister, you haven't read this?
I know Jim Crow is. I don't know.
Good. What is Jim Crow?
Jim Crow was the segregation law that limit black people in the South.
MashaAllah, you guys are really smart here. I really respect this community. So that's true. So the Jim Crow laws in this country were laws that after the prohibition of slavery in this country, they created these laws that limited people's ability to participate in society. For example, voting. All of a sudden when you went to vote, your grandfather had to have voted in order for you to vote. Obviously, if you just got the right to vote, your grandfather wouldn't have been able to vote. Or they introduced a poll tax, right? So that, you had to pay money to vote, which didn't exist, prior to that. Now, the new Jim Crow is very interesting. There's a woman, I can't remember her name, but she worked for the ACLU, and she tells this story that one day she was in California, and she was waiting for the bus, and she saw a sign, like on a post or something that said, "The New Jim Crow." And she started shaking her head. She was like, man, when are people going to realize that if they use this kind of exaggerated language, that people aren't going to take them seriously? There's no new Jim Crow in this country. But as she continued her work in the American Civil Liberties Union, she started to realize there is a new Jim Crow. And in her book, she goes through a sequence of things saying that basically, yes, slavery was abolished, and then the Jim Crow laws came, and people were still sort of outwardly racist in terms of what they were saying. But later on, and maybe in the 60s, expressing racism towards certain groups became unpopular. But it didn't mean that racist sentiment was eradicated. It just became less popular. So people started to express their racist beliefs in a more subtle and encoded way. And the new Jim Crow is something that when I grew up, when I was maybe your age or a bit younger, watching TV, it really wasn't about Muslims. Muslims were like very much like off the radar, but crime and crack. I mean, growing up on the news, it was like crack babies, crack wars, crack this, crack that. And you would see basically poor African American people depicted as dangerous and doing all this kind of stuff. But then when you look into the numbers, the actual real factual numbers, you find some very interesting things. So the first thing you find is that there's no evidence that to support, even with crack itself, that there's any kind of racial difference in terms of usage. So white people use crack just as much as black people. That's a fact, right? But if there are more white people in this country than black people, that means that the majority of the users of crack are white. True or false? So but there was this media depiction that painted it a completely different way. And then they made laws. So certain drugs were treated with extremely harsh punishments. That if you had possession of certain drugs, you would be put in jail for a very long time. They introduced harsher and harsher sentencing. We live in a time right now where we are at actually a record low in terms of crime in America. We're at a record high in terms of people in prison. Like it kind of doesn't really make sense that if there's not that much crime, why are there so many people imprisoned? And so that is really the new Jim Crow, that that African Americans and Latinos have been portrayed a certain way in the media, that policies in this country have changed. We have something called stop and frisk, right? If you're white, you're probably not going to be stopped and frisked. There was some study that showed that white people are much more likely to travel in their cars with drugs than anyone else because they never get pulled over. So they're just not really worried about transporting drugs from one place to another. But there's even a book, I think it's called Driving While Black, that basically says that if you've got a nice car and you're black, you're going to be pulled over, and the cops just expect that you're up to something, and even if they find that you're not, they're going to give you some kind of ticket just because they wasted their time. It's a crazy situation. To understand what's going on with Muslims in this country, how the media is portraying us, how that media portrayal affects policies that are made that affect us, it's not like a new thing. I mean, people shouldn't be shaking their heads and be like, oh man, what this situation for Muslims, it's so difficult to understand. This thing has happened in this country many times before. It's changed names, it's changed forms, and I believe that Muslims are working very hard to change the way that we're perceived in the media. But who knows, maybe in 10 years, there'll be another group, right? Maybe it'll be East Asians. Who knows who will be the next target of racism and bigotry. And inshallah, we will achieve sort of justice and equity for ourselves and continue to carry on the struggle for everybody that experiences this in the future. So that's the end of my presentation. Should we do a little, is there any discussion? Do people have thoughts that they want to share or questions? Don't everybody, go all at once.
I'll share a little.
Please.
About what you said about there being a lot of African Americans and Latinos in jail. African American males actually make up 50% of the population in jail and 13% of the population out there.
Yeah, and it's largely because I don't know how to put it, that the law is not being applied equally, and on top of that, policies have changed this country so that if you've ever been in prison, you may not be able to vote, right? That right is stripped. So there's the creation of what they call a permanent undercaste. Not an underclass, but an undercaste in society, that once you've been branded a certain way, you're not going to be able to get a job, you're not going to be able to get housing, you're not going to be able to vote. It's amazing that these things are happening. There's sort of like an other America, right? All of us, I don't know how far you live from the masjid, but I think in a sense, you may drive past people that have been, sort of part of this other America who are being treated a certain way, and if you're not really paying attention, you're not going to notice that this is happening. Just like a lot of American people are totally unaware of Muslims being sent to Guantanamo Bay, or Muslims being detained for no reason, or Muslims not being able to return back to this country, or Muslims being on airports being pulled aside and searched for hours and hours or interrogated. But we should be, if anybody should be aware of the so-called other America, it should be us.
Can you tell us a little bit how you converted to Islam?
Oh man. No, I can't. This is an off-topic question. And you guys aren't old enough for this one, man. You're not mature enough to handle this story.
I got this, yo, no problem.
All right. So it's a very long story. I don't even know if we have enough time. I don't know if Allah created enough time for this stuff. Oh, thank you. All right. So, generally speaking, I have a Christian background, but I became an atheist in like kindergarten or something. And that's a weird idea, but it's true. What's that? No, it's just something I decided at a young age. But as I was in high school, I started like kind of searching a bit, maybe faith, maybe there's some value to it. I learned about a lot of different religions, not so much about Islam. And then when I was like 19 years old, I moved out of my house and I moved to Astoria. Have any of you guys been to Astoria before?
Yeah, where's that?
Astoria's in Queens.
It's like Moroccan.
Moroccans are there, Bangladeshis are there, everybody's there, right? A lot of Muslims are there. And I used to go to work and I would pass this store that said, read Quran. I passed this thing probably like 1,000 times. And like, I never was really like that curious about it. But I did become like aware of Muslims. Like in this area we have a lot of Salafis. You guys know the Salafis? Really jolly bunch of Muslims. So, I was aware of like, these guys and their beards and the way they're dressing. So I had this like awareness of Muslims that I didn't have when I lived in the suburbs, and I'd never even seen a Muslim before. Post the war in Iraq, I was like sort of an anti-war kind of mentality, and I saw how like, and it was kind of shocking to me that we even went to war. I think my parents and myself, we had this idea that there's not going to be another like big war, that like war's over, but obviously that's absolutely not true. War is not over. So I distrusted the depiction of, I guess, like Muslims and Arabs in the media at the time, and it made me more curious to learn about Muslims. So I started to read the Quran, I met Muslims, and I noticed something about my Muslim friends that I didn't notice about my non-Muslim friends. And this was probably kind of like a tipping point issue for me. My non-Muslim friends, and myself as well, were involved in kind of things that really weren't valuable, right? A lot of activities, a lot of things I'm not going to tell you about, but that weren't moving us forward at all. And people were going through the same dramas again and again and again. But my Muslim friends, it was like amazing. They were like really getting ahead in life. And I was like, man, I want some of that. So, long story short, my Muslim friends kind of made a pathway for me to learn more about Islam. The more I learned about it, the more I liked it. And eventually I took my Shahada, and that's that. Allahu Akbar.
Do you ever experience Islamophobia yourself, like when you go out in stores and all that?
That is a very great question. So saying, do I experience Islamophobia? No, I experience what's called white privilege. No, it's true. You think I'm joking, but everywhere I go, I'm not treated the way other Muslims are treated, whether it's outside the Muslim community or even inside the Muslim community. You guys probably have much more better speakers, but you're invited. No, maybe that's not true. I don't know. Anyway, but oh, thank you, sister. I'll give you your money later. No, I really don't. And not that I want to be, but there's definitely like people prejudge you negatively or positively. So some people are being all these stereotypes that are negative are hurting them, and me, I have a lot of stereotypes that are positive that are helping me. And even that is kind of the jihad in a way, because all of us, we have to try to struggle to be sincere and to be fair and everything. So, great question. Sisters, come on, the brothers are asking all these great questions. So a lot of people said that their jihad is changing the way Islam is represented and all this. So how are you guys doing that?
as an individual, I just try to be very nice to everyone, very social person at the school, you know, I smile a lot, and I'm very open with people, so they feel very open to ask me questions and and my brother's going to figure it out, I was gonna say, but
No, it's a good answer. What about you, man? That was your jihad.
Right?
Yeah.
Well,
You got it.
no, I don't think it was actually.
No, you borrowed it from somebody.
like the holiday, like right now, no.
It's a great on-topic question here, man.
I was just wondering, like, kids, because you were talking about in high school and stuff.
I'm very old.
So what's
Very
the
old.
question you asked me?
How are you personally? Like, what are you doing to change the perspective of Islam and Muslims?
Well, I feel one way you have to change perspective. I mean, me personally, I don't really, you can really like change someone, you know what I'm saying? You can only try to influence them, you know what I'm saying? Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes the hearts of man. But if you're inclined to spread your belief, you know what I'm saying, and do what you have to do.
No, I'm saying.
Like, I understand that I can't change anyone's perception, but that doesn't mean that that you're not supposed to try, you know what I mean? And I do, you know, I try to be very kind and compassionate and smile at people, you know what I mean? Like my sister would say.
MashaAllah.
Gotta spread the love.
Man, you guys are like the tag team of like spreading Islam. So I think if there's any more comments or questions, we're about done here.
How old are you?
I know we're not here.
359.
So I'm working for IBM.
Please, somebody speaking. Or respected.
I'm working for IBM, so we have many Jews and maybe from Israel. And sometimes I'm not like people like avoiding them and not trying to work with them, but I'm trying to open channels and break that down. So, for example, that if I work for someone, maybe I would say I am working 3x more than my regular work, just to show him that okay, we are Muslims, they are working and you know a good image, and then the off topics open automatically after you finish work or having dinner or lunch together. Then all this talking are coming after it. So I think this is my thinking, not to avoid, but just try to engage. Well, I'm not going to immerse, and he is not going to convert me or something, but I'm just trying to open channels. This is my whole idea.
Jazakallah. Thank you everybody for participating and listening and being patient. Before we wrap this up, we need to talk about the debate. Are you guys aware of this debate? Debate, yes. So let's talk about this debate a little bit, right? So this is, I think, a really rare opportunity for young people and parents to give their opinions and their thoughts on some of the most pressing issues that affect Muslims and young people in particular. So for this debate, we're going to do it in a certain way called the Oxford style, right? And the Oxford style debate is whoever wins, it's not by just votes, it's about changing people's minds, right? So in the beginning, we're going to give you guys a motion, and then everybody's going to be asked to vote on this. And then in the end, we're going to vote again on the same motion, and whichever side managed to change the most minds is the side that wins. I believe there are going to be 4 of the parents and 4 of the youth. Have the youth been selected?
Yes.
No.
They have. Okay, great. So if you're... They don't know yet. I see. So,
They're all working together, just maybe 4 of them are going to be speaking out, so that we can just manage the control and everything, that's all right.
yeah, exactly.
2 boys and 2 girls.
So, I mean, definitely, you may have chosen them, but if people who are really interested to participate in this, they should let you guys know. If there's a lot of interest, we may have like maybe 3, or could add an additional person or something. Let's see how it goes. And I guess Yeah. Yeah, we could. We definitely could. So, okay, Jazakallah.
These are the people that we pick. You always say, but it's different.
Money.
So you knew that, right?